"She's confused, just let her sign." The words came from Thomas Morrison, 52, standing behind his mother's wheelchair in the probate courtroom. His hand rested on her shoulder with what looked like tenderness, but felt like control. His voice carried the practiced concern of a devoted son addressing a sympathetic audience. Around them, the gallery murmured approval. Such a good son, taking care of his aging mother. Margaret Morrison, 78, sat silent in a cream cardigan that hung loose on her thin frame. Her hands lay folded in her lap, pale and still. She didn't look up. She didn't speak. She barely seemed present. Judge Raymond Chen glanced at the thick petition before him, a formal request to declare Margaret legally incompetent and transfer control of her entire estate to Thomas as her conservator. The hearing had been scheduled for weeks. Thomas had filed everything correctly, every form in order, every signature witnessed. Medical reports documented progressive cognitive decline. Financial statements showed concerning patterns. A declaration from Margaret's personal physician stated clearly that she could no longer manage her own affairs. The courtroom was half full with witnesses Thomas had brought to support his case. Everything appeared legitimate, compassionate, necessary. But they didn't know what Margaret had been doing for the past 6 months. The bailiff called the case to order. Thomas stepped forward confidently, his attorney beside him. Robert Vance was expensive, the kind who wore platinum cufflinks and knew every judge in the courthouse by their first name. He placed a pristine leather folder on the plaintiff's table and smiled at Judge Chen with practiced deference, the smile of a man accustomed to winning. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter of protecting a vulnerable elderly woman from herself," Vance began, his voice smooth as silk. "Mrs. Morrison has advanced dementia. She can't remember appointments or conversations. She's begun giving money away to strangers who knock on her door. She's accused family members of stealing when nothing is missing. Her own physician, Dr. Philip Corman, has thoroughly documented her decline over the past 3 years. My client, her only child, is here today to ensure his mother receives the proper care and protection she deserves." Thomas nodded solemnly, his expression the picture of filial concern. In the second row, his wife Jennifer dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, playing her part perfectly. Beside her sat Dr. Corman, distinguished in a dark suit, and 2 of Margaret's longtime neighbors who had known her for decades. The case looked airtight, wrapped up with a bow. Just another unfortunate story of aging and decline, a responsible son stepping up when his mother could no longer care for herself. Margaret still hadn't moved. She sat in that wheelchair like a ghost, like someone who'd already disappeared from her own life. Judge Chen studied the old woman carefully. She wore no makeup, no jewelry except a simple wedding band. Her grey hair was pulled back in a plain bun. Her shoes were practical orthopedic sneakers, not expensive. Everything about her presentation suggested frailty, confusion, a woman who'd gotten lost somewhere in her own mind and couldn't find her way back. He'd seen 100 cases like this over his 15 years on the bench. Adult children seeking control of aging parents' assets, usually with good reason, sometimes without. The law required him to determine capacity, nothing more, nothing less. "Mrs. Morrison," Judge Chen said gently, leaning forward slightly, "do you understand why you're here today?" Margaret looked up slowly. Her eyes were clear, pale blue like winter sky, and remarkably steady. She met the judge's gaze without hesitation, without confusion, without the vacant look he'd expected. "Yes, Your Honor." Her voice was quiet but surprisingly firm. Thomas's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her shoulder. Judge Chen noticed. "Your son is petitioning this court to manage your financial and personal affairs. He believes you're no longer capable of doing so yourself. Do you understand that?" "I understand completely." "And do you wish to contest this petition?" The courtroom held its collective breath. This was the moment that would determine everything. Thomas leaned down slightly as if to help his elderly mother hear the question better. Margaret didn't acknowledge him. She kept her eyes locked on Judge Chen. "Yes, Your Honor. I contest it completely and without reservation." The murmur in the gallery grew louder. Surprise, confusion, some concern. Thomas straightened abruptly, genuine surprise flickering across his carefully composed face, before he smoothed it away. Vance frowned and began flipping through his notes rapidly. Judge Chen made a notation on his legal pad. "Very well, Mr. Vance, you may present your case." What Thomas missed in that moment was the manila folder in Margaret's lap, half hidden beneath the folds of her cardigan. Vance stood smoothly and called his first witness. Dr. Philip Corman took the stand, raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He was 60, silver-haired, with the comfortable authority of a physician who'd spent 3 decades being believed without question, whose word was rarely challenged. Dr. Corman, how long have you been Mrs. Morrison's primary care physician? 3 years this past April. And during that time, have you observed cognitive decline in your patient? Yes, significant and progressive. Mrs. Morrison has demonstrated increasing difficulty remembering recent conversations. She's become disoriented regarding dates, times, and even familiar locations. 6 months ago, she forgot she'd already taken her blood pressure medication and took a second dose, which could have been dangerous. I've documented all of this carefully in her medical file. Vance nodded sympathetically. In your professional medical opinion, is Mrs. Morrison capable of managing complex financial affairs? No, absolutely not. It would be unsafe and irresponsible to expect her to handle her own finances at this stage of decline. Thank you, Doctor. No further questions. Judge Chen turned to Margaret, his voice still gentle. Mrs. Morrison, do you have an attorney representing you today? No, Your Honor. I'll be representing myself. Another murmur rippled through the courtroom, louder this time. Thomas's jaw tightened visibly. Self-representation by an allegedly incompetent person was either desperate foolishness or something else entirely, and neither scenario helped her case. Vance allowed himself a small, confident smirk. Do you wish to cross-examine this witness? Judge Chen asked, doubt evident in his tone. Margaret looked at Dr. Corman for a long, measured moment. The doctor met her gaze with professional sympathy, the kind carefully cultivated for patients who don't understand their own limitations, who can't see what's happening to them. Dr. Corman, Margaret said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness, when exactly did you last see me in your office? 3 weeks ago. Your son brought you in for a routine follow-up. And what did we discuss during that appointment? Your medications, primarily, your ongoing memory issues, standard monitoring for a patient with your condition. Did I seem confused during that visit? You were pleasant and cooperative, but yes, there were clear signs of cognitive impairment that concerned me. What specifically? Dr. Corman shifted slightly in his seat. You asked the same question twice during our conversation, which indicated short-term memory problems. What question did I allegedly ask twice? You asked about the possibility of changing your blood pressure medication to a different formulation. Margaret nodded slowly, as if processing this information. Dr. Corman, have you ever reviewed my complete medical history from before you became my physician 3 years ago? I reviewed the relevant records your son provided when you transferred to my practice from your previous doctor. Did those records include any information about my professional background or employment history? Vance rose quickly. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. Your Honor, Margaret said calmly, not looking away from Dr. Corman, it's directly relevant to the question of my cognitive baseline and functional capacity. Judge Chen considered for a moment, his interest clearly piqued. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Dr. Corman. I don't specifically recall seeing employment information in the medical records I reviewed. So you don't know what I did for a living before I retired 7 years ago? No, I don't believe that information was included in the transfer documents. Thank you, Doctor. No further questions at this time. The detail he ignored, the piece he didn't think to investigate, was the precision and legal framing of her questions. Vance called his next witness, clearly eager to move forward with his planned narrative. Sandra Chen, no relation to the judge, took the stand. She was 70, kind-faced with gentle eyes and genuinely distressed. She testified that she'd been Margaret's neighbor for 15 years, that they'd been close friends who had coffee together weekly, attended the same church, celebrated holidays together. But over the past year, she said sadly, Margaret had changed. She'd become increasingly withdrawn, stopped attending Sunday services, forgotten their regular coffee dates. Most troubling, Sandra testified, Margaret had given $2,000 in cash to a door-to-door salesman who claimed to represent a veterans charity, but turned out to be a scam artist. She'd also forgotten Sandra's birthday after remembering it faithfully for more than a decade. She's not herself anymore, Sandra said, her voice thick with emotion. I care about Margaret deeply. She's one of my dearest friends. This is breaking my heart to say these things. But Thomas is right. She needs help. She needs protection before something terrible happens. Judge Chen thanked her gently. Margaret, surprisingly, declined to cross-examine her friend. The pattern was forming clearly now, exactly as Vance had orchestrated it. Witness after witness, each one carefully selected, each one painting the same picture from a different angle. Margaret's decline, her increasing vulnerability, her poor judgment, her son's appropriate concern and devotion. The case was proceeding like a well-rehearsed play, every actor knowing their lines, every scene building toward the inevitable conclusion. In the gallery, Jennifer Morrison looked relieved, confident now that everything was going according to plan. Thomas's expression remained appropriately somber, the picture of a burdened but dutiful son. His performance was flawless. But Margaret was watching everything with those clear, steady eyes. Her hands never moved from the folder in her lap. She sat perfectly still, perfectly silent, perfectly aware. Vance called his final and most important witness. Thomas Morrison himself took the stand, placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Then he began to speak about his mother with evident emotion that seemed entirely genuine. He described how he'd first noticed the changes about 18 months ago, how his mother had stopped returning his phone calls, then later claimed she'd never received them, that her phone never rang, how he'd stopped by her house and found unpaid bills stacked on her kitchen counter, some of them months overdue, collection notices mixed in, how she'd become paranoid, accusing him of stealing from her, a claim so baseless and hurtful it had devastated him. How he'd tried to help, tried to manage things quietly without embarrassing her, but the situation had only deteriorated. "I love my mother more than anything in this world," Thomas said, his voice catching with emotion. "This isn't about money. It's never been about money. It's about making sure she's safe, that she's cared for, that she doesn't lose everything she worked so hard for because she can't manage anymore. Our family home is paid off, but she's at real risk of losing it if she can't manage her finances. I'm asking this court to let me protect her. That's all I want, to protect my mother." Several people in the gallery nodded sympathetically. One woman wiped her eyes. It was a masterful, compelling performance delivered with apparently genuine feeling. Judge Chen studied Thomas for a moment, then turned to Margaret. "Mrs. Morrison, do you wish to cross-examine your son?" "Yes, Your Honor, I do." Thomas looked directly at his mother for the first time since taking the stand. For just a brief moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Not concern, not love, something colder, calculation. Then it was gone, replaced again by filial devotion. Margaret's voice remained quiet, almost gentle as she began. "Thomas, you testified that I stopped returning your telephone calls. Approximately how many times did you call me in the past 6 months?" Thomas shifted in his seat slightly. "I don't have an exact number off the top of my head. Many times. More than 10 times? Yes, definitely more than 10. More than 20 times? Probably, yes. And you said I accused you of stealing from me. When specifically did I make this accusation?" "About 4 months ago. You called me upset and claimed I'd taken money from your account without permission. How much money did I claim you took?" "You weren't specific about an amount. You were confused, just generally upset." "Did I file a police report about this alleged theft?" Thomas hesitated. "No, you didn't." "Did I contact my bank to report fraudulent activity?" I don't know if you did that or not. Did I tell anyone else about this supposed theft besides you?" "I'm not certain. I don't think so." Margaret nodded slowly. "You also testified that you found unpaid bills in my home. When was the last time you were inside my house?" "A few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks." "Did I invite you inside on that occasion?" Another pause, longer this time. "The door was unlocked. I was worried about you, so I let myself in to check on you." "So you entered my home without my knowledge or permission?" "Mom, I was trying to help. I was concerned." "Please answer yes or no. Did I give you permission to enter my home 3 weeks ago?" Thomas's jaw worked. "No. You mentioned having a key. When did I give you that key?" "I've had a key to your house for years. From when Dad was still alive and you wanted someone to have emergency access. So I gave you that key approximately 15 years ago, correct?" "Something like that, yes." "And I never asked for it back?" "No. Have I given you that key again, or confirmed that you should still have access within the past 5 years?" Thomas looked at his attorney, who kept his expression carefully neutral. "No, you haven't specifically discussed the key recently." "Thank you, Thomas." No further questions. What Thomas didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Margaret had installed a sophisticated security system 4 months earlier, and that every unauthorized entry he'd made had been recorded in crystal-clear video. Judge Chen called a 15-minute recess. The gallery slowly emptied into the courthouse hallway, people stretching, whispering, trying to make sense of what they'd just witnessed. Thomas and Vance immediately huddled in a corner of the courtroom, speaking in low, urgent tones. Vance was flipping through his folder rapidly, his previous confidence clearly shaken, rechecking notes and dates. Jennifer approached them, but Thomas waved her away with a sharp gesture. His carefully maintained composure had cracked just slightly, showing something harder underneath. Margaret remained seated in her wheelchair, alone in the mostly empty courtroom. The bailiff, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, brought her a cup of water. Margaret accepted it with a quiet, "Thank you," but didn't drink. Her hands stayed motionless on the folder. She didn't look worried. She didn't look afraid. She looked like someone waiting patiently for a bus she knew was coming. In the hallway, Sandra spoke quietly with another neighbor who'd attended the hearing. She seemed so sharp during those questions, so focused. "Did you notice? Maybe Thomas is wrong about how bad it is." "She's good at hiding it," Jennifer interrupted, stepping close to them, her voice low but certain and a bit sharp. "Trust me. I've seen her at home when nobody's watching. She puts on a good show when she needs to, but she's declining. That's what makes it so dangerous." Sandra looked uncertain but nodded slowly and said nothing more. The bailiff's voice echoed through the hallway. "All parties, please return to the courtroom." The crowd filed back in, the energy different now, more uncertain. Something had shifted during the first half of the hearing, though most people couldn't quite identify what. Judge Chen returned to the bench, his expression thoughtful and more guarded than before. The courtroom settled into expectant silence. "Mrs. Morrison," Judge Chen said, "do you wish to present any evidence or testimony on your own behalf?" Margaret lifted the manila folder from her lap with deliberate, unhurried movements. She removed a single sheet of paper, held it for a moment as if weighing what came next, then handed it to the bailiff. The bailiff delivered it to Judge Chen, who began reading immediately. His expression shifted. First surprise, then something sharper, more intense. His eyebrows rose. He read it again, more slowly this time, then looked up at Margaret with new eyes. "Mr. Vance," Judge Chen said slowly, his voice carrying a new edge, "were you aware that Mrs. Morrison holds a Juris Doctorate from Columbia Law School, where she graduated in 1972? The courtroom went absolutely silent. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not a breath. Vance's face went completely blank, his practiced composure evaporating. Thomas froze in his seat as if he'd been turned to stone. In the gallery, Jennifer's mouth opened slightly, her hand rising to her throat. Sandra Chen's eyes went wide. "Were you aware," Judge Chen continued, his voice gaining strength, "that Mrs. Morrison practiced estate and probate law in this very county for 37 years before retiring in 2018? Vance found his voice, though it came out weaker than before. "Your Honor, that's... Even attorneys can develop dementia as they age. A professional background doesn't preclude..." "Were you aware," Judge Chen cut him off, "that she served as a judge pro tempore in this very courthouse for 8 years? That she sat exactly where I'm sitting now and made the same determinations I'm making today?" The silence was absolute, heavy, suffocating. Margaret spoke for the first time since the recess. Her voice was still quiet, but something fundamental had changed in it. The gentleness was gone, stripped away like a mask no longer needed. What remained was pure precision, the voice of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms and knew exactly how they worked. "Your Honor, I know exactly why I'm here today. My son wants control of my estate, which currently holds $1.4 million in liquid assets, plus the family home valued at approximately $800,000. I know this precisely because I review my financial statements every single month, as I have done without fail for the past 40 years. I know that 3 weeks ago, my son used a key I provided 15 years ago for emergencies to enter my home without my knowledge or permission. I know this because I installed a comprehensive security system in August after noticing that items in my home had been moved during my absences." She paused. Every eye in the courtroom was locked on her. Thomas had gone pale. "I know that Dr. Corman's medical records contain false and misleading information because my son has been present at every single appointment for the past 2 years and has actively influenced the documentation. I know that Sandra Chen, my dear friend Sandra, gave money to a fraudulent charity, not me. I wrote her a check to help her recover her loss, which she misunderstood, due to her own memory concerns, not mine. And I know that every single unpaid bill my son allegedly found in my home was already scheduled for automatic electronic payment through my bank, a system I established in 2019 and monitor online weekly. Judge Chen leaned forward intently. Mrs. Morrison, why didn't you present this information through legal counsel? Why represent yourself? Because I wanted to see exactly what my son would say under oath, Your Honor. I wanted to know if he would tell the truth or if he would lie directly to this court. I wanted his words on the official record, in his own voice, with no attorney to filter them or soften them or provide him with legal cover. She opened the folder fully. Inside were documents, dozens of them, neatly organized with colored tabs, photographs, printouts, bank statements, and a small digital recording device. Your Honor, I would like to submit evidence for the court's consideration. The bailiff collected the folder and delivered it to Judge Chen. Vance was on his feet immediately, desperation showing through his professional veneer. Your Honor, I strenuously object to any evidence submitted without proper discovery procedures. We've had no opportunity to review— Sit down, Mr. Vance, Judge Chen said quietly, but the command in his voice was unmistakable. The attorney sat. The judge examined the contents of the folder methodically, taking his time with each document. His expression remained carefully neutral, but his eyes had gone very hard like stone. After nearly 10 minutes of complete silence, he looked up. Mrs. Morrison, this appears to be a comprehensive file documenting unauthorized entries into your home, attempts to access your bank accounts without authorization, and communications between your son and Dr. Corman, explicitly discussing how to establish a convincing pattern of decline in the medical records. Is that an accurate summary? Yes, Your Honor. And these photographs, time-stamped and geotagged, show your son inside your home on specific dates when you've documented being elsewhere with receipts and witness statements. Yes, Your Honor. The security system uploads everything to cloud storage in real time. It cannot be tampered with or deleted locally. Thomas had gone from pale to gray. Vance was scribbling notes furiously, his hand visibly shaking. In the gallery, Jennifer had risen halfway from her seat and frozen there, trapped between sitting and fleeing. Sandra had both hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. Judge Chen turned his full attention to Thomas, who sat in the gallery looking like a man watching his entire life collapse. Mr. Morrison, you're still under oath from your testimony. Did you coordinate with Dr. Corman to falsify or exaggerate medical records? Thomas's attorney jumped to his feet. Your Honor, I strenuously advise my client not to answer without— Your client is under oath in my courtroom, Judge Chen said, his voice hard as iron now. He will answer the question, or he will be held in contempt. This is not a criminal proceeding yet, so he has no Fifth Amendment protection here. Mr. Morrison, answer the question, yes or no. Did you coordinate with Dr. Corman to create false documentation of cognitive decline? Thomas's mouth opened and closed. He looked desperately at Vance, who gave the smallest helpless shake of his head. Thomas looked back at the judge, then at his mother. Margaret's expression was utterly neutral, revealing nothing. I was trying to help her, to make sure the records reflected— Yes or no, Mr. Morrison? Thomas's shoulders sagged, the fight going out of him. Yes. The courtroom erupted in shocked gasps and urgent whispers. Judge Chen's gavel cracked like a gunshot, the sound echoing off the walls. Order! I will clear this courtroom if necessary. He waited until complete silence returned. Mr. Morrison, did you enter your mother's home without her knowledge or permission on multiple occasions? I had a key, and I was worried that she didn't give you recently and that you used without her consent. Did you enter without permission, yes or no? Yes. Did you attempt to access or transfer funds from her bank accounts? Thomas said nothing, staring at his hands. Mr. Morrison, I can subpoena the bank records myself within the hour. This is your last opportunity to be truthful with this court. Did you access your mother's accounts without authorization? Vance was white-faced, no longer even pretending to have control of the situation. Your Honor, please, my client needs to consult with— Answer the question, Mr. Morrison, Judge Chen said, his voice cutting through Vance's objections like a blade. Thomas closed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Yes, small amounts at first, loans. I was going to pay everything back, I swear. How much total? I don't remember exactly. How much, Mr. Morrison? $47,000, over about 6 months. The courtroom exploded again, louder this time. Jennifer had sunk back into her seat and buried her face in her hands. Sandra was staring at Thomas with an expression of complete horror and betrayal. Judge Chen let the noise build for several seconds, before bringing down his gavel again, harder this time. But what none of them knew yet was the other document in Margaret's folder, the one the judge hadn't reached yet. Judge Chen continued flipping through the remaining papers. He stopped suddenly at one particular page, read it very carefully, then looked up at Margaret with something remarkably close to professional respect. Mrs. Morrison, am I correct in understanding that you filed a formal complaint with the State Bar Association against Mr. Vance exactly 3 days ago? Vance's head snapped up so fast it looked painful. What? Your Honor, The complaint alleges that Mr. Vance knowingly submitted fraudulent medical evidence to this court, failed to conduct even minimal due diligence regarding his client's claims, and violated multiple professional responsibility rules in his handling of this case. Is that accurate, Mrs. Morrison? Yes, Your Honor, that's correct, Margaret said calmly. Mr. Vance never interviewed me directly, not even once. He never requested my medical records from any physician other than Dr. Corman. He never verified any of the factual claims in the petition. A competent ethical attorney would have discovered my professional background within a few hours of basic research. My bar record is public. My judicial service is public record. He chose not to look. Vance was on his feet, his professional composure completely shattered now. Your Honor, I relied in good faith on information provided by my client. I had no reason to believe. You had every reason to investigate, Mr. Vance. You relied on unverified information regarding a petition that would strip an elderly woman of her fundamental legal autonomy and constitutional rights. Sit down. We'll return to your conduct shortly. Vance sat heavily, looking like a man who'd just watched his career catch fire. Judge Chen turned his attention back to Thomas. Mr. Morrison, did you inform your attorney that your mother was a retired attorney and former judge? Thomas said nothing for a long moment. Mr. Morrison, answer the question. No, I didn't tell him. Why not? I didn't think it mattered. She's still old. She still forgets things sometimes. People get old and they decline, that's just reality. Does she forget things? Judge Chen's voice was sharp as a razor now. Or did you need her to appear to forget things? Did you need her to seem incompetent so you could take control of her assets before she discovered you'd been systematically stealing from her for months? Thomas's silence was answer enough. Judge Chen set the papers down with deliberate care. Mrs. Morrison, do you have additional evidence you wish to present? Yes, Your Honor. If I may approach the bench? You may. Margaret rose from the wheelchair. She rose smoothly, fluidly, without any tremor or uncertainty or difficulty. She rose like someone who'd never needed the wheelchair in the first place. She walked to the bench with a steady, confident stride, her posture straight, her movements those of someone decades younger. Behind her, the gallery stirred with shocked whispers. She'd been in that wheelchair for the entire proceeding, appearing frail and diminished. The frailty had been a choice, a strategic decision, a role she'd played perfectly. She handed Judge Chen the small digital recording device. This contains audio recorded in my kitchen 4 weeks ago when my son entered my home during one of my appointments with Dr. Sarah Mendez, my actual physician of 20 years, who will testify under oath that I have no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Judge Chen connected the device to the courtroom's audio system and pressed play. Static crackled through the speakers, then voices emerged with perfect clarity. Thomas's voice. The petition's filed. Chen's a good judge, sympathetic to elder abuse cases. We just need to make sure she looks confused enough at the hearing. Jennifer's voice. What if she fights it? What if she brings a lawyer? Thomas. She won't. She doesn't even know I've been in her accounts. And if she does figure it out, Corman's records will make her look paranoid. That's what's beautiful about it. Dementia patients always accuse their families of stealing. Nobody believes them. Jennifer. What about her friends? Sandra and the others? Thomas. They're old too. They already think she's losing it because I've been telling them stories for months. Sandra already believes Mum got scammed by that charity guy. Never mind that it was actually Sandra who got scammed and Mum helped her. Once we have conservatorship, we sell the house. Move her into managed care where she can't cause problems, and the rest of the money is ours. All of it, Jennifer. Thomas, are you absolutely sure about this? It feels wrong. Thomas, I'm completely sure. We're talking about $2 million total. She's 78 years old. How much longer is she realistically going to live anyway? 5 years? 10 at most? This way we get to enjoy the money while we're still young enough to actually use it. It's not really stealing. It's just early inheritance. The recording ended. The courtroom was frozen in absolute horrified silence. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Jennifer Morrison was crying openly now, but not from sympathy or support. From the recognition that everything, her marriage, her reputation, her freedom possibly, had just been destroyed in less than 2 minutes of recorded conversation. Sandra had both hands clasped over her mouth, as if physically holding back a scream. The other witnesses were staring at Thomas with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to fury. Judge Chen's face had transformed into something cold and hard as granite. When he spoke, his voice carried the full weight of judicial authority. Mr. Morrison, you coordinated an elaborate, premeditated scheme to defraud your own mother of her entire estate. You systematically stole tens of thousands of dollars from her accounts. You fabricated evidence of dementia through a corrupt physician. You manipulated her friends and neighbors. You committed perjury in this court. And you planned to institutionalize her against her will, stripping her of her freedom and dignity so you could spend her money while you're still young enough to enjoy it. Thomas said nothing. His face was the color of old ash. There was nothing left to say, no defense to offer, no explanation that could make any of this better. Mr. Vance, you accepted this case and brought this petition before my court without conducting even basic due diligence. You submitted what you should have known was fraudulent evidence. You failed in your fundamental duties as an officer of this court. Vance opened his mouth, found no words, and closed it again. He sank lower in his chair. Judge Chen turned to Margaret, and his voice softened very slightly. Mrs. Morrison, I apologize that this court almost became complicit in this abuse. Your petition to contest is granted. Mr. Morrison's petition for conservatorship is denied with prejudice and may not be refiled. Furthermore, he paused, his gaze sweeping across the silent courtroom. I am referring this entire matter to the District Attorney's Office for immediate criminal investigation. The evidence suggests multiple felonies, including conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, grand theft, perjury, and potentially others. Bailiff, Mr. Morrison is not to leave this courtroom until he has been formally detained for questioning by law enforcement. 2 sheriff's deputies who'd been standing in the back moved forward immediately. Thomas looked at them approaching, then desperately at his mother one last time. His eyes were pleading, terrified, looking for some hint of mercy or forgiveness. Mom, please, I'm your son. You can't... Margaret met his gaze steadily. When she spoke, her voice carried 37 years of courtroom authority and absolute finality. You stopped being my son the moment you decided I was an obstacle to be removed instead of a person to be loved. The deputies took Thomas by each arm and escorted him from the courtroom. He didn't resist. He moved like a sleepwalker, like someone in shock. Vance was desperately gathering his papers with trembling hands, clearly wanting to flee before things got worse. Jennifer had already disappeared from the gallery. She'd slipped out during the recording, probably the smartest thing she'd done all day. The gallery was in controlled chaos now, quiet chaos, shocked whispers, people pulling out phones to text or call others, the kind of chaos that came when people witnessed something they knew would be talked about for years. Judge Chen addressed Margaret one final time. Mrs. Morrison, do you require any protective orders or additional relief from this court? No, Your Honor. I've already changed all my locks, updated my estate documents with independent counsel, and retained a criminal defense attorney to represent my interests in the prosecution. I just needed the truth established on the official record of this court. You have that, Mrs. Morrison. You absolutely have that. This hearing is concluded. The gavel fell with a sound like thunder. What Thomas hadn't known, what he'd never thought to consider, was that Margaret had contacted the district attorney's office 3 weeks earlier, and 2 detectives from the Financial Crimes Division had been sitting in the very back row of the courtroom, watching everything, taking notes, building their case from the moment the hearing began. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice, karma, and the power of truth. Drop a comment Have you ever witnessed someone underestimated prove everyone wrong?